Hi there, my name's Craig Hamilton Parker. I'm a psychic medium and I make my predictions every year around this time in October 2021 for the year ahead. So these are my world predictions for 2022. It's going to be quite a long video, I warn you. If you prefer shorter versions, just follow this channel and I do occasional predictions all the time through the year. But these are my main ones for 2022. So make a cup of tea, sit back and let's have a chat about what I feel is going to happen in 2022. Hi and thanks for joining me. So today I'm going to be talking about my predictions for the year ahead, for the world predictions, for all the world. I expect there's things I'll overlook, so if there's anything that I miss, do put your comments below because as you know, I produce these type of videos all the way through the year, but this is the sort of big one, the overview for 2022. I get quite a lot right. I think people would say that I'm pretty good at getting most of it right, but I do get some bits wrong, so I'm fallible. All psychic people are fallible up to a point. You know, you can't claim to get it all right, but you do kind of see a little bit more than the pundits might see sometimes. You see a little bit more than the journalists see, and of course you see things that are completely come to us out of the blue, and sometimes I might say some really weird stuff, you know, and when that all comes, it's all part of the mix of us picking these things up. I mean, sometimes I don't know what I'm getting. Sometimes I just get it's like in the Bible where it says through a mirror darkly, you know, or through a glass darkly, isn't it? You kind of get a glimpse, a feeling of things sometimes. You don't see the whole picture, but you get part of it or you get all of it sometimes. It's hard to put these things into a sort of a chronological order. So it's a bit like Nostradamus did this, you know, he would mix it all up in his quadrants, you know, he got the word wrong there, he would see it all at different time sequences all at once sometimes. And it's a bit like that for us psychics. We're all a bit like that. We can't, it's more like an agenda. It's kind of like a timetable rather than a chronological list. This will happen at this date in 2022. But we get the feeling, we get a lot of things right. It might not all be for 2022, but I do think the things that I'm going to tell you will happen in due course. And you can keep tabs on me, of course, by following this channel, checking out my website, of course, as well, where I put the predictions up as well. And you can get updates all of the time. And I will be doing some, you know, little spontaneous short ones that we do every now and again, where I go live and you can ask your questions to me live. So if you want all that, follow this channel. Okay, so there's the push at the beginning to follow the channel. But you're going to be with me a fair while today as we go through some of the stuff here that I've got. So let's just have a think about where we've come from and what's happening now. We've come out of the virus, of course. This has been quite a terrible few years for the world. I predicted the virus, and I did get that right. It was in the newspapers. I put it in the newspapers early on, where I had some interviews that a virus would hit. It did hit, not exactly on the timing, as I said, but it did happen. I think there'll be another one, not this year, but I think there will be more in the future, which I've also written about in my new book recently, which I'll tell you about soon. Did it come from a lab? I think we have to ask ourselves in retrospect, looking at all what's happened, because I said right at the beginning, I felt it came out of a lab, didn't I? I was really convinced about that. And then it was all poo-pooed, and now they're saying, oh, maybe it has. Maybe we'll never get to the bottom of this, they said. It was interesting. You know, I'm very interested in India. And I go to India a lot, and I'll tell you about some more about those things later on as we progress. But when in India, I consulted the Nadi oracles, the ancient hidden oracles. A lot of fake ones out there. Don't go looking them up and trying to find there's a real one. Takes a real lot of tracking down. But I found a Nadi. Give us some ideas about the future, and it said that the Nadi said, didn't it, that this was a biological weapon. And that's my belief, that it was a biological weapon, and we would never get to the bottom of it, it said. I was checking my notes. It won't get to the bottom of it until 2048. So it's quite a long time, and it was pretty insightful of the Nadi to think that, wasn't it? That we wouldn't be till 2048. And I think that makes a lot of sense, that we'd never get to the bottom of it. Who knows what's going to happen in 2048 to make us get to the bottom of it? What's going to happen to China then? But I'll talk about more things like that in a moment. But anyway, I told us about the virus coming up in March 2020. And I said 2021 would be a year or so of many earthquakes. And that's all happened. We've had all that. It wasn't quite exactly as I said. I said an island would be evacuated. And you remember we've had La Palma in the Canary Islands, enormous volcanic activity there. They haven't actually evacuated the island, but I did say an island would be evacuated through a volcanic activity. So pretty close to that, and it might still happen yet, mightn't it? I mean, so like I say, through a glass darkly, I saw part of it. I saw quite a lot, and it has indeed, hasn't it, been a year of a lot of volcanic activity. I think, and seismic activity, and I think we're going to get a lot more of that ahead in 2022. In fact, we're going to get that over the next few years, from 2022 and through to 2024. I do feel we're going to continue to get a lot of serious seismic activity. So we're going to see, quite a few more earthquakes and volcanic activity. This has nothing to do with global warming. This is a separate issue. Global warming doesn't, they say, affect the earth, but in that way. But I still think we're going to get a lot of that type of thing over the years. I think the hallmark, just as an overview of what I'm going to tell you, that was my hallmark for this year. I think that one of the big serious things that's going to be coming up over 2022, which I'll tell you much more about as we go through, is a sudden and dangerous proliferation of nuclear weapons. I'm going to tell you more about that as we move on, because in the Chinese horoscope, which I always find very interesting, we're coming up into the year of the tiger. And tigers are not the most friendly of animals, are they? From the 1st of February 2022, we move into the year of the tiger. It's a water tiger this year, which is less aggressive. But the tiger can show, year of the tiger can show things like extremes. It can be an explosive type of time, sudden changes. Positively, it can be big and bold moves, though. It can be big and bold moves of people coming together. It's not all negative, because it's also a very dynamic energy that comes with that year. It can bring about a lot of social change for the good. It can bring also political rebellions, and it can bring military coups. And I feel it can also bring some warlike footings. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be in a state of full-out war anywhere, but I think we're going to have a lot of worries ahead with military things this year. We've just got this virus out the way, not entirely. I think the virus is going to be with us for another couple of years before it's out of the news, as it were. I think we are beating it. We will beat it now, and we will get back to a gradual normality. But we've got to get the whole world back to that normality, haven't we? We've got to start thinking properly globally and think of ourselves as one humanity, not selfishly keep it all to ourselves type of thing. So is part of the growing consciousness, the growing awareness, the step forward towards the ultimate golden age, which I'll talk about at the end of the video. But we have to work together. These are the things that I've said before, that have come through the trance mediumship so often throughout my career, working as a medium, and not just through my trance work that I've done in the past, but other mediums I've met. The problems we'll have in the world are so big that we all have to come together to solve it. Okay, so don't forget, subscribe if you're new. I'm just going to now move on to my first set of predictions, which is, I'm going to start off with the royal family. So the British royal family, I'm sure the whole world is absolutely concerned about this one, but I think it's a nice place to start, actually. I did talk about, didn't I, in the past, that Meghan and Harry would leave the royal family, and they go to live in, I said at first, Canada and America, and indeed it happened, and of course that was a big one, and it's caused an awful lot of rumpus in the royal family, and a lot of division again. Because of Meghan's attitude, I think, mainly. So that's something we'll pick up again. Jane and I have done some other prediction videos about that here on YouTube. You've got any comments, put them below about it. And I also predicted the death of Prince Philip, and I actually predicted a senior member of the royal family dies, do you remember? I said, and that did happen as well. So those are the two main predictions. We made many more. Jane and myself made many more that came true, but I don't want to bore you with all the what I've got right or what I've got wrong, come to that. But those things did happen. Now, the Queen is ill at the time I'm speaking to you, and I don't like to predict her death, but I think, you know, I think we do know that the Queen is getting towards the end of her years. I don't see her going much further, actually. I feel they haven't spoken about this, but I feel that she's got heart problems. They've not said anything in the news about that, but she'll be diagnosed ultimately with heart problems. I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. That would be very sad. It would also create an awful lot of conflict with The Crown on Netflix, which is screening. And I feel this, I think it will happen with the Queen, but there's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Bad timing. When the Queen dies, that's when we'll see Prince cited to the America. At the moment, it seems like there's not a hope in hell. As I said before, it will always get kicked down the road, kicked down the road, kicked down the road, and they're going to keep trying to do that. But I think he's eventually going to be brought to book, and it won't be until the Queen has passed over. Until then, he's just going to dodge the issue. They'll keep just extending it as long as they can. If they can get it into years and years of arbitration, they will. And I think it's going to be very hard. But I think he'll eventually get caught, and eventually get called out. But it's not until the Queen's passed over, which would also mean, you know, possibly the coronation of Prince Charles, and after that, I think therefore that after we've had the Queen, the Charles will come to become King Charles. But his reign, I feel, will be short. He's an old. It would be short anyway in terms of compared to Queen Elizabeth because of his age. But I don't feel as if King Charles will last a long reign somehow. It's like he gets his crown, and he doesn't get the full chance of being a full king. That's my thoughts with that. I think Charles will be quite a good king in many respects, because of his outspoken drive to make sure the environment is right, and is also his sympathy for other religions such as Islam and things like. I think he will be quite a good force. I feel that he will be very harsh on Meghan Markle and Harry. I think they've been holding their tongues for a long time there. And I think next year we're going to see an awful lot more bitterness coming out. And people will, I think, see Harry and Meghan for what they are, basically whingers. For you Australians, they like to listen to this, they're whingers. And I don't think that they've got a legitimate excuse to make so much fuss. And they're basically after their money, aren't they? And I think they will lose a lot, and I think we'll see them too losing a lot of their contracts, actually, because I think a lot of it's going to be complete flops. And as me and Jane have predicted, I think Harry and Meghan will eventually divorce. Eventually, also, of course, William and Kate will be the king and queen after Charles. And I think that William and Kate will be the last king and queen, as it were, or king of England. After that, I think that the monarchy will finish. So that's my thoughts to begin with. Obviously, I could talk for hours about all of these topics. That's a first insight. We'll do some more. Jane, my wife, who's also medium, and you follow the channel, you see we both talk sometimes about these things. We'll do some more on the royal family. I get a feeling that's going to be very big in the news this year. And also, while I'm talking to you, a lot of my thoughts about what's happening in the world is in my new book, which I'm going to plug to you. Sorry, but I'm going to plug it because it's brilliant. It's called Be Happy, right? Be Happy is my book. And it's all about going to India again to see this fella, Sharavana Baba, who is absolutely fascinating Hindu teacher. He's a Sadguru, which is a high-level guru. He's telepathic. He can read your thoughts. And when I was there, I decided to write this book based upon some of his teachings, but also some of my thoughts about the future as well, because he tells us a lot about what's going to happen in the future. And I've put a lot in this about the future and what's going to happen. And it's, how do we remain happy when things are dire around us? You know, you people might think I'm a prophet of doom sometimes, but I also believe we can find happiness even in the worst of situations. But I'll tell you a little bit more, because I'm going to plug it again in a minute. I'll warn you. I'll tell you a bit more about the book as we go along. It's available on Amazon or through my website at psychics.co.uk. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is going to be sort of basically celebrity things and news and scandals and things like that. So these are sort of the celebrity type things. Now, I'm not a great lover of making predictions about celebrities. I'd rather Jane does that, because she's much more in tune to those type of things. And you remember, actually, my wife Jane, she said that a member of the Rolling Stones would die this year. And of course, we lost Charlie Watts. I don't like to make predictions about people dying, but nonetheless, it happened. She said it on one of our live shows. So some of the new things coming up, I think on the La La Land and all the rest of it, the important things at the moment is the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, because we're going to see all that happening in the year ahead. I get the feeling this is really going to open up the floodgates. We all think it's a big deal already, but I think it's an even bigger deal than we've even imagined. And I'm seeing people being prosecuted who are billionaires. I'm seeing top name politicians being sued as well and losing office. Now, I can't really go naming all those people because I've got a few thoughts and ideas about that, but we might reveal a few bits and pieces as it breaks in the news over the coming year. There's going to be some big revelation about someone really high up in British politics who's part of the establishment. But this time it's going to be a real paedophile type thing. I know we've got the whole business around the royal family sort of quotes with that, 17 years old, but this is much younger. There's something going to be very big that's all going to be linked to this Jeffrey Epstein business, and it's high up in the British political establishment. Similarly, although this is going to hit all round, I think there's also going to be something that's going to affect somebody who's going to be a future US presidential candidate for the 2024 elections. One of the candidates is also going to be implicated in something really, really heavy about sexual misconduct. So we're going to see those type and lots more. I think there's going to be a lot coming out of this. There's going to be quite a lot of sexual harassment accusations, not just from the Epstein thing. This is generally going to be happening for senators in the USA. There's going to be a hell of a lot of scandal breaking. I mean, there normally is, particularly when it comes to politics time, with the primaries and things like that. But there's going to be some big corruption scandals exposed, and money coming in, back pocket money going to people from China. China is, I'm going to talk more about China again, but China's going to be big on the agenda. China has been bribing people left, right and centre, and I feel all these backhanders that have been going on are going to get exposed. This is going to come partly through things like the Epstein scandal, there's some of that, but also I feel that we're going to get a lot more of these hidden away bank accounts being exposed, you know, these things where they hide it away in tax havens around the world. I'm seeing a lot of that being shown. I was also getting something about Ringo Starr. Now, I don't think Ringo Starr's going to pass or anything, but I just got this feeling that I was trying to tune in when I was sort of thinking about, Jane said about Charlie Watts. I just feel that Ringo Starr, you know, is going to live a long time. Now, that's an odd one to put in because it's something that's not going to happen rather than happen. But I just saw Ringo Starr outliving Paul McCartney and becoming the last surviving Beatle. And I see him living for quite an old age. You know, I see him living a very long time. And I just feel that his time will almost come at the end of his life where he becomes the last light of that great movement. I also saw a film being made. Nothing as far as I'm aware anywhere have ever been announced about this. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I don't think I've heard this unconsciously or something. But I was seeing a film being made about Walt Disney, the man Walt Disney. And I saw it being made with matted faces on people's faces, you know, like they do with computer graphics. And it was like not a cartoon. The story went partly into cartoon and then partly into real life. But the whole thing has been made up with artificial intelligence being used, matting, face matting, and things like that done about the life of Walt Disney. Very sanitized version, probably made by Walt Disney Studios, probably avoiding all the stuff where he was involved in his interest in Nazism and things like that. But I just saw something like that on the entertainment side of things. Also, Abba, you know, Abba's going to be doing their big show coming up soon. I think in the early part. I'm not quite sure when it is, but it's in 2022 at some point. And I sort of saw. I know this is on the same sort of line in some ways as the Walt Disney thing, because they're going to be doing a cyber version of themselves. But I get the feeling that one of the members of the group is not participating in the actual when it launches. They'll obviously be in the cyber version of it, but there's like when it comes to press interviews and things like that, I feel one of them pulls out, whether it's through illness or another argument or something like that. It's a last minute problem with it. It won't disrupt the live streams that people are going to necessarily see, but I do feel as if it's going to affect a lot of the public relations in the background. And I get a feeling there's a bit of something going on there. Something is revealed that's not very nice about Abba, the group. Okay. And okay, there was other one weird sort of little thing that I saw as well. This is, I don't know why I put it in with celebrity stuff, because it's not strictly celebrity stuff, but I don't know if there's something with California or Hollywood associated with this, or I was also seeing something with Austria or Germany, and German speaking with this. But I see a story breaking, I've written down here, about a child who's kept in darkness. And for years, they were kept in a dark room for years, and they could hardly see. Their eyesight was going with it, and they had long matted hair and unkempt fingernails and things like this, long fingernails. And I just get some weird, horrible story that I see about something like that. So that's just something I've just thrown in the mix there that I saw. And it's a weird, odd story that I feel will break in 2022 time. I think it's in 2022, but it's like the boy with the matted hair. It's because his hair, there's something about the hair. It's all sort of huge and knotted and massive. So I think we will see that type of thing. So Jane will give us some more later, I expect, when we go live. You can always follow us on Saturdays at the moment. We'll be doing that throughout the year, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Again, I've told you once, I'll tell you again, and you hit that little bell thing on the screen somewhere. It's over here somewhere, I think. You click down there somewhere and you'll be able to get the followers thing and click the bell so that you get the notifications. And we have a lot coming up 2022 actually, with all sorts of new shows planned, and we're building a special set at the studio because I'm doing this from my office today. But we've got lots of new helpers coming along helping us, and lots of help from the patrons out there helping the channel. So a lot ahead. So I predict that's going to be an interesting time for all of you. So follow us. Okay, we're going to move on now to the next lot, which is going to be, we're going to talk next all about Earth changes and things like that. So next talk is about Earth changes and that type of thing. So you remember, as I said at the top of this recording, I said about La Palma and the Canary Isles that I predicted about, and 2021 seeing this huge amount of seismic activity. So I got a fair bit right this year. So let's see, and also some of the things about hurricanes and things I got right too, didn't I? But anyway, there's other stuff out there that you can see. Some of the things I predict, these are kind of linked with ideas of climate and things like that, because you know, don't need to be psychic to know that there's going to be problems ahead with things such as climate change. We're going to see ridiculous weather in the years ahead. But I felt, you know, particularly we start honing some of these things down. I saw mass starvation in North Korea. And I also feel we're going to start to see starvation again in Africa. I mean, it's happening. I mean, starvation is happening in places like Africa. But I'm seeing crops failing. And I'm seeing really serious problems with food shortages now, you know. And food shortages also are going to affect everybody, you know, including the West. You know, I think the years where we can have everything out of season crops on our dinner table whenever we want are going. But I do see serious problems. And I saw like a huge, I really do sound like a biblical prophet now, but I saw a huge sort of locust sort of storm of some sort. Insects, but they weren't locusts. There was something else about these insects I saw. There's some form of insect that was a big, great swathes of them swarming across, destroying crops. And I actually thought, I'm not quite sure where it is, but I think it might be the USA that I saw that. So there's something happening with that, and I think we will be worried a lot about food shortages over the period ahead. I saw a big oil spill in Canada. I feel that it's like a major, I don't know quite what you've got in Canada there with your pipelines, because you must have quite a few, but I saw a big pipeline burst and a nasty oil spill on, you know, these environmental issues. So that's something. Again, now fires. We're getting lots of fires all the time. I mean, it's almost become a regular as clockwork now to get major fires in places like California and Australia. And I'm sure we'll still get all that type of thing going on, because the global climate is such that we're never going to get away from that. Mediterranean too, and India and all sorts of places where there's lots of heat, I see fires. But I get the feeling this time there's going to be a very unusual one, in that I saw an alpine area burning, you know, and normally we get it in deciduous areas and tropical areas we see the fires, but I see an alpine fire, a very big alpine fire. Now, it felt huge to me, so I think it might be somewhere like Russia, because I actually saw the ground burning as well, not just the trees, but the earth itself burning. And I don't know quite what that could be, but putting two and two together, it makes me wonder, could the tundra itself, the peat of the ground, actually catch fire? I don't know if that's even possible. But that was my thoughts on that. And so I saw a fire like that. And, you know, just like I was tuning into this and seeing other things, and I saw the Palma I was going through my mind. I thought, and again, I thought, actually, there's another island that I feel is going to be in trouble. Not La Palma this time, but I felt it was a big island. And I felt perhaps it's somewhere, I remember Borneo went up in flames once. And I just get the feeling, could it be also somewhere that's another sort of sealed off area, like Madagascar, which would be dreadful if that went up in flames, because it's such a fragile ecology there. But I felt as if something might be in the news about Madagascar. So, you know, all these things, you know, it's so sad to even be thinking about these things. So, you know, as I'm talking, you know, this part, the beginning of the year, you know, we got all the discussions about the environment going on in the news. So these things might be influencing me unconsciously. But I mean, I think we have got a lot to sort out in this world, you know, and we're going to see a lot more extreme weather in the years ahead. And we all know that, don't we? Violent hurricanes will be the norm in the future. Dams will break again and infrastructures will give way. I feel dam breaks is going to be another one of them. And I actually saw visions of London and Paris, and I think this is coming up this year, both very badly flooded, and particularly Paris, but I felt both were badly flooded. And extreme weather in China will be particularly bad this year. China's going to get very, very hard, I feel, probably with flooding. But I just felt as if I felt disasters in the China. But it could be anywhere in the world at the moment, couldn't it? But that's my thoughts about where it's heading. Also, China, at the moment, as I'm talking, China's pretty difficult about it's not attending the environmental talks and things. But I think that China's never going to come to heel on things like pollution issues and chucking all this coal burners into the air. And the only way we're ever going to stop them is a trade embargo. And I think we're going to start to see a bit of a Cold War occurring between the West generally and China. We have to stop buying so many Chinese goods for our own good and the good of the planet. Or, and I think this is what's more likely to happen, is we're going to have to start putting carbon tax on imported goods with a mark if you're a country that's polluting and another mark if you're an industry that's polluting. So if it comes from China, it gets a special tax. If it comes from a particularly bad Chinese factory or the factory can't be easily identified, then it would have a black mark against it and a carbon tax. So I see all that coming through. And this year, I feel, and it will bring conflict in its wake as well, because it's going to cause conflict in China and with China, with the world as well. And those are some of the things I'll talk about in a moment. On a more positive sort of side of things, though, I think some of the countries of the world are going to start to actually really do something about their environmental footprint. I do feel there's going to be, you remember I predicted all about these world parks for undersea parks at first I talked about. That all came about, didn't it? I talked about that. I think we have already seen, you know, an improvement to the idea of trying to save the jungles and things like that. But I'm seeing a world fund being formed eventually, a very big world fund that will be used to target certain areas and countries that haven't got the infrastructure or the finances to sort themselves out. An example would be South Africa. South Africa has a terrible coal burning problem there because it can just dig the coal up in South Africa and burn it in South Africa. But I see an international fund that will be used, not a charitable fund, governments give money into it, that targets the worst areas and sorts them out. So we sort of build you new, more environmentally friendly fueling systems. Long term, on a more positive note with all these things, remember in my other predictions I've also talked about big breakthroughs ultimately with energy, and that we're going to have something that's going to solve these problems. This is like a 0 point energy of some sort, where we can get energy, more energy out than we put in. It's like Edgar Casey actually talked about the idea of a perpetual motion machine. He talked about actually what he was seeing, I feel, is something like I'm seeing, which is that we put more energy, we put some energy in, we get more energy out. That's like a perpetual motion. It's not perpetual motion, it's a perpetual energy machine. That's we're going to get that, and I think that's close. I think that's close. And I don't agree with this idea. I don't know how you feel, and put some ideas in the comments what you think about this. But I don't agree with this idea that if you've polluted in the past, we should therefore be able to pollute now. You know, they say to us, oh well, Britain flooded the world with waste when it had the Industrial Revolution. Therefore, we've got to catch our economy up, and therefore we should be allowed to pump our stuff into the air for the time being. I think that's a really bad idea, personally, because it makes the situation worse. The Industrial Revolution actually helped everybody. We wouldn't have these advanced economies at all if the Industrial Revolution hadn't happened first in Britain and then around the world. And so it was for the whole of humanity benefited from it, not just one country or another. And I don't like the idea of that these dark satanic mills that William Blake called them should continue, you know, just because they happened in the past. So that's that. Anyway, energy from water is the last thing I've got on my list here, which is, this is kind of, I feel this perpetual energy thing has something to do with water, and perhaps something to do with the unique way that water has its, like they talk about the memory of water, its unique way of forming structures. Something like that has something to do with just the way you can make multiple snowflakes. I don't understand. Like I say, it's through a glass darkly. I don't always see it all, but I see part of it. Now, I'm not going to let you go without having another little quick chat about my new book, okay? Because it's you can get it on my website, and I talk about how can we keep happy? How can we remain happy through difficult times? And I went to India, and it's the first part of the book's about how the Nadi Oracle directed me to meet this man called Sadhguru Sri Sharavana Baba. Okay, that's his full title. Lovely, happy, cheery sort of guy. And I'm not promoting people to go becoming devotees of anybody, but nor am I. I'm not a devotee of anybody. I will believe in free will, and that we must be our own masters ultimately. But I learnt a great deal. And I learnt a great deal about happiness. And in this book, I also put a lot of the thoughts that have been going through my mind over the whole coronavirus period, because a large part of this book was written while we had coronavirus. So I talk about what the Nadis told us about the coronavirus and what the Nadis told us about the future of the world. And I even put in here, not all of it, but part of Donald Trump's Nadi as well, if those of you that like to follow my political predictions. I haven't put anything in there that I feel would be not right to put in, because, you know, a Nadi is for that person's, for their spiritual progress. But things that I think you would find interesting that are not going to upset his spiritual path. You know, all people, you know, have to be honoured. We have to do the Nadis with a great deal of integrity. But I've revealed some of it, and what some of the Nadis have said about the future, and also a lot more of my thoughts about the long-term future. So you've got a lot in here. You've got my thoughts, if you like following me, and even better, you've got Sharavana's thoughts and philosophy, and a lot of the ideas about, you know, I've talked about the Golden Age and what the Golden Age is, and how it's coming, when it's coming, how we will embrace it, and what we can do to make it happen. So I think you'll enjoy it. Be happy, you know, that's a good idea, even if you come out smiling, because there's some funny stories in there as well. Okay, we're going to move on now to the next lot. You see, I've got all the notes here for us today. Wars and conflicts. I told you this was going to be a bit of a marathon one, and obviously I can't cover everything. If there's anything you'd like me to cover that I haven't covered in today's talk, do put the comments in the comment in below, because you'll be able to ask me questions about what other things you want me to do in future videos. You know, we can touch upon some of the things here. I'll obviously go into much more depth as the year goes on, but we're given a kind of an overview at the moment. But I'm always interested in what you have to say. What's your ideas? Put a comment below. Right, some of the things I said last time, briefly, I talked about rising tensions in Taiwan and an imminent war there. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. I talked also, do you remember I said last year that there would be a Chinese sub-collision with one of an American sub? And it happened right to the letter, because the USS Connecticut hit a Chinese sub. Well, they're not completely sure about it, but we think it's they're claiming that it could be a Chinese submarine collision. So I said that would trigger serious war. It hasn't. So I wasn't completely right, but I was right about that part of it. I think we are going to see serious problems there. I'll tell you more about that. I also talked about the botched retreat from Afghanistan in my videos, if you followed me. I also talked about the arms race that was going to happen in the China Seas, going right back in 2021. I started talking about we see an arms race there. And I spoke also about the arming of Australia, which has happened as well. And also, but I don't know if that my submarine business that I was picking up on was perhaps a veiled sort of impression of the submarines purchases in Australia and the conflicts it caused with Britain and France. So there we go. That's some of the things that I was talking about. Plus there was other stuff if you follow me, but it would take hours to go through them all. But some of the new stuff, based some of it on what I've just said too, because I've got here in 2022, I feel that China, it's going to be revealed that they have huge, massive military stockpiles and huge, massive military developments that the rest of us are completely unaware of. They've kind of thought about some of this already, and I've been saying it for a while, but I think there's been a real secret arms race going on in China, really major. We've seen them doing things like the islands and things like that, but I think they've actually already outstripped America. And I think this is going to be in the news, that they're going to say, hey, China's outstripped America and we didn't even realize it. China is the leading military power in the world, and they've done it without us knowing. It's been done in a clandestine way, and I think they've got a massive capability that they've hidden away in sort of like mountainsides in Tibet and places like that. They've got loads, they've been pouring loads of money into this without us knowing. And most importantly, I think they also will be revealed. It will be discovered that they have hidden germ warfare facilities. This is part to do with the Wuhan business. That was a germ warfare facility. This is why they covered it up so much. And I feel that we're going to hear about this in the coming months. And we will know about this hidden agendas, hidden germ warfare and other dreadful stuff based on manipulating, viruses like SARS, and based on manipulating bat viruses and all these other ones that we know can do dreadful harm and be spread by coughs and sneezes. And saying that, and also I saw hidden rocket faculties hidden away in China too, just like Kim Jong-un done, hiding away stuff inside of mountains and things. They're going to have a supersonic sort of very super fast rocket technology that is pointed at you and me. So the threat from China is going to be increasing. Meanwhile, also there's other instabilities happening in China as well. I feel that they're economically, they've been booming, but I think they're going to start to slide a bit, because I mentioned that I feel there's going to be some embargoes against China. And I think there can be some serious embargoes against China, and that's going to cause a lot of instability within China. Ultimately, I say with China, and I've been saying this for years, I see that China's going to implode and there's going to be a revolution in China. But I'm not going to go on about that today, because I've covered that in lots of other videos. But I do think that we're going to Taiwan, as I said, that this would be the flashpoint of the year coming up last year. It has been, and it's getting worse. And I think Taiwan is going to be a really serious problem with China this year. I think we might get an attack on Taiwan from China. I know they've been worrying about it, but I saw it 2 years ago. I want to say it coming up. And I also feel that India could be under threat from China too, particularly coming down through the, east of India, coming down that way, and also the north on the other side, coming down through the sort of Nepal, isn't it, at the top there, and all around that area. I see lots of conflicts. I see actual firing of weapons. I don't think an invasion, but I think we're going to see a lot of border conflicts, quite serious, not just a few guns, possibly tanks, all sorts of things, where we're starting to see the two rising powers in the east, India and China, coming to conflicts. Ultimately, India will grow quicker than China eventually, and I think they will be kind of a saviour for the world in many respects. But that's for another video that I will talk about another time. Japan is also going to start taking on nuclear weapons. I've said this before, it didn't happen, but I still feel it's on the agenda. You know, like I say, I don't always get it in chronological order. I still feel that's going to happen, that Japan is going to become a nuclear power. It has in its constitution, I think, that it can't be a nuclear power, but I think that's going to be overturned, and I see Japan developing hypersonic missiles as well. So we're going to see a real big arms race ahead, which we're going to start seeing as the world tries to catch up with China's overspending on military capability. Meanwhile, I see Russia being a problem. It's really like the naughty boy, really, rather than the nuclear threat that it used to be in the Cold War. But I see them shutting off parts of the electric grid in USA through a cyber attack. So I'm seeing a sort of clandestine, hidden cyber attack on the USA, also on the UK and Europe. It's like they're doing all this dirty business behind the scene of bringing everything down and focusing all their attacks now on cyber technology, possibly ultimately in cahoots with China one day, because I said that I felt that Germany and China, not Germany, I'm going to talk about those in a minute, China and Russia would become allies militarily and trade between each other military capabilities. And also I think because of all these shutdowns, I see Germany having to rethink its whole idea of phasing out nuclear power, because they're going to try to phase out nuclear power next year, I believe. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to have to rethink. And I'm seeing these kind of like different forms of nuclear power being used, mini power stations, almost small ones, size of a house sort of thing, rather than the great big industrial facilities of a new way of doing nuclear power. This might be something that's going to be happening worldwide, but also maybe spearheaded ultimately by Germany. Now, Kim Jong-un in North Korea, I think he's at the end of his tether this year too, 2022. I've always said in the past that he would be deposed ultimately by his own people. I feel that something's happening there. I know he's been showing signs of ill health, but I don't think it's ill health that'll take him. I think he's going to be deposed, and I feel that happening soon, because like I said, I see a lot serious starvation going on there. They've got problems already actually in North Korea, so it's not all me saying that, but I feel real escalation of that and real serious things being revealed to us on that. Also on conflicts and things, I see a terrorist gunman, okay, who infiltrates a peaceful protest somewhere. So it's like a peace march of some sort, and everybody's walking along doing the peace march, a bit like the ones we had here in the UK with the insulate homes type of thing, all sort of ordinary or crusty individuals, you know, wouldn't harm a fly type of thing. And I see a gunman amongst them and killing both the police and the protesters. I'm not quite sure where that is. I think it's English-speaking place. It's English-speaking, so it's probably UK or America. But I've seen a nasty event like that, and maybe also some copycats on those, because we're going to get quite a lot of political protests, I feel, coming up. But I feel them being under a lot of threat. Finally, Iran, I feel, is going to be another one of the very, very serious problems in 2022. Like I said, it's the year of the tiger. It's a dangerous time. And I feel Iran's going to announce that it has full nuclear capability. They've been going for it for a long time now. And what's going to happen? I think Israel will strike them. There's going to be a strike by Israel, whether it's done by air or by Mossad or something going in there and blowing stuff up, James Bond style. There's going to be something where there's going to be explosions around the Iranian facilities. And I think they're going to lose their patience in Israel, and they're going to go in and hit them when they can. And it will be rather unpleasant, that one as well. So we've got a lot of conflict ahead. We're not talking about, you know, end of the world wars and things here, but we are talking about lots of worrying stuff in the news, and it's minor conflicts really, but with the potential of turning into very serious things. But I feel that, you know, there's sparks around on very explosive situations. Okay, we'll move on to the next one about world politics. Okay, politics. I've made a lot of predictions about politics over my time. I got well known because I made the predictions about Donald Trump coming to power, of course, and Brexit and so forth, which they picked up on the newspapers and is even on Wikipedia now. So if you want to check any of those out, you can have a look at my website. But I'm going to talk about some new stuff now. Joe Biden. I don't think he's going to make it either far past 2022 or even through 2022. I sense he's not going to complete his full term of presidency, and I feel he will be removed from power. It will be claimed to be health issues, you know, but it's actually a coup from his own party in the background. He's gonna be removed from power. He is Sleepy Joe Biden, as he's was dubbed by Trump, of course, is being seen by the world as being a bit of a Sleepy Joe and an absolute puppet in the hands of everybody else. It's obvious that he can't even answer press questions, and the rest of it, you know, it doesn't take a lot of insight from anybody to see that guy really has pretty much had it, and is a dangerous person to have in power at a time when the world is seeing greater and greater conflict and a real need for decisive leadership and strong leadership with clarity given to the people about why this is happening and proper press scrutiny about what's going on. So a very dangerous time, I think, with him in power. And I think he's going to be pushed out of power, because I think even the Democrats realise that this is not really a man that you can have running a country when there is serious issues ahead. And, you know, we've got the tiger itself, not just of the year, but the tiger of China, which could be a very, very dangerous position to be put in. So that, I think, is going to happen. I think he will be replaced by a woman, but I don't think it's going to be Kamala Harris. I've said this before, I've talked about these things, and at least she would probably, if he was removed, she'd probably have to come in for a short period at least. But I've seen another woman coming in as the possible follower of that. But also, and this is where I've spoken about this before, but this is also something that really confuses me a bit, because I've spoken about it before. I see a real rising star in the Republican Party in America of a black woman, a really powerfully minded black woman that I think is going to be a real change to politics in America. And she's going to be very much on the side of Trump. In fact, I see her working the bid together with Trump as a bid for the White House. It's like Trump and a black woman working together in a very powerful way that I think will ultimately make a bid for the White House. So I see that, and I've mentioned this before. A few of you have had thoughts and ideas about this. I don't know American politics well enough to be able to fully say who it is, but I just feel that there's a black woman that is going to be very, very important in American politics. And we're not talking about Oprah Winfrey's and people like that. No, this is a very dynamic-minded person. This is a person who's politics first, not entertainment or anything like that. Real political person. Someone with the same sort of power of speaking like we have over here with Nigel Farage and people like that, who goes to speak at Trump's rallies. So that's what I see. And also, we also, Trump TV's another interesting one, because you remember I predicted Trump TV, but it didn't happen as TV. It came out as a form of new social media. I think he's calling it Truth, isn't he? I don't know how any politician can use the word truth on a social media, but anyway, he's calling it Truth. Certainly the fight for what his version of truth would be. I think this is going to be a bit of a slow start he's going to get to this, but I think ultimately it's going to be a successful. And I think with the coming of the midterm elections in America, I think that it's going to get many, many more subscribers. Trump will announce that he's going to run in 2024, and he's going to announce it on that platform. He's waiting for that platform to be fully functional and to have plenty of subscribers, and then he will relay the big news through that platform, and that's going to be the first big announcement that he's going to make there, because he's going to catch the attention of people through that social media platform. And I think it will work. I think it's going to be very different to Facebooks and things like that. I'm seeing it much more video orientated, much more news orientated. I'm seeing people like I mentioned Nigel Farage earlier. I see him being part of it and having his own show on there regularly, probably streamed from the UK. But we're going to have a lot of right-wing type of thinkers speaking on his programme. And I think he will get a lot of support and followers from it, because I think he will stand again in 2024. And actually, I think he might even make it to president again. The 2022 midterms they got coming up in America. Now, I'm not a great understander of American politics, but I got the feeling that there's going to be a really big swing away from the Democrats. I get the sense that Joe Biden has been made such a poor show of things. Usually the incumbent president is always the one that loses votes at that time of year, because everybody's, by that time the shine's run off, they're out of their honeymoon period. But I think it's more than that this time. The terrible problems over Afghanistan, but I think there's going to be all these other things I've been talking about, Taiwan and things like that, and massive immigration problems in America coming up next year as well, I've got to say. And this is going to swing the tide, and both in the you have the House, don't you? You have the House of Representatives, and also in the Senate as well. I think both areas are Democrats are going to lose a huge amount of voting power, and it's going to be put a very difficult imbalance in American politics, and make it very hard for anybody to do anything. And again, in a very difficult situation. Not now. I think in years ahead, I think this division is going to get worse, and I think there might even be sort of almost like a civil war in America one day. A sort of not a full scale like the American Civil War was in the past, not that sort of level, but certainly conflicts and guns on the street. I think that one day that will happen, but that's a long time ahead. But I think we'll see a lot of riots in America over the coming years. In Europe, I feel there's going to be a lot of disintegration. I don't see Europe. I've talked about Europe a lot before. And I said that Europe would break up after Brexit. We're starting to see the breakup of Europe. We're starting to see a lot of internal conflicts between Europe. It's still holding together. But I think we're going to see much more news. And I think actually I said Denmark would be one of the countries that would start to make a move out of Europe. But actually, Poland and Hungary, could we not this year in 2022 see perhaps Hungary or Poland actually beginning to make moves to break from Europe as we know it? I see ultimately Europe breaking into two, a French Europe and German Europe, and then that French one breaks up and we just get a German federation of a group of countries in the East working together, more like an economic union than a monetary union and so forth, ultimately, long term. But I'll talk about those type of things more in the year ahead, and I've already spoke about those in depth before. But so just trying to keep more or less to 2022 now. The Brazilian leader, what's his name? Jair Bolsonaro. I think there's going to be a coup. I think he's going to be removed by force. That man is not a good man. I think we're going to see him brought to book, and a much more stable situation found in Brazil. So I feel that there will be obviously nasty, because it will be it will be done by force. It will be a military coup, and I feel that democracy will re-establish properly after that, nonetheless. And also in UK politics, Keith Starmer, I think, is going to be replaced as well. I talked about Joe Biden going. I think Keith Starmer's going to go as well, and we're going to see someone new taking over from him, a female. Again, I feel a lot of female politicians coming to power in the years ahead and in the year ahead. So those are some of my ones for politics. Of course, politics is a big topic, could go on for ages just on politics, and I'll do some more. So if you follow the channel, every now and again I go live, and then I put up questions just like we do on our live show, where you can ask me questions and put your comments, and I'll do a few more of those since we've just released this video. Keep following the channel, and I'll do some spontaneous ones that I just suddenly come up with every now and again for you. And hopefully, again, don't forget my book. And if you want to, if you're interested in well, politics in my book, funnily enough, strangely enough. But if you're interested in the future, do also use the services on my website, if you would. Obviously I've got to make a living too. So it'd be nice if you could use some of my psychics on my website at psychics.co.uk, because I've got a lot of guys there that work in America, and they're British psychics, but they work for America. We got lines for Australia, we got lines for the UK, live lines that you can call. And get an insight into your future, what will happen to you. Jane and I also offer readings, but few and far between, really, because we can only do so many because it takes so much energy from us. But those of you that would like to just have a call, see what a psychic might say about you, have a look at my website at psychics.co.uk and call the numbers there, and you can call now and get a reading. Okay, we're going to move on now to the world economy. Okay, economic things. Facebook. The new Facebook Meta business, the virtual world, will be a complete flop. I told you, didn't I? I told you last year that Facebook was going to be brought to book. And I said Google and Amazon will be too. But Facebook's been the first to fall. I think we're going to see big repercussions from this. And I just don't think this virtual world they've got in mind is going to work whatsoever. Partly opinion, partly feeling on this, because people don't like to be seen. They like the discretion of not being known who's writing these things. People like to be discreet in the background. They like to be able to say things without being seen. And this whole business of the meta thing is being seen in some respect, albeit you in a virtual world, and you might be able to take on an avatar or something. But it's not going to work. I just feel it's not going to, apart from gamers possibly, it could be work as a gaming sort of platform, but not as a Facebook type of social media platform as they want. So I see that going down the pan. I see Facebook ultimately getting in serious financial problems as new players come onto the field, and new legislation means that we'll have smaller type of Facebook type companies, for example, that just deal with family and friends. And all you have is a little bit like, I've forgotten the name of it now. Friends Reunited was like. You remember? That was a bit lame. But, something a bit more inclusive. So that's something I see as happening. Facebook's gone. Google next. And then Amazon. Those two are also going to face the chop, and they'll be brought to book about tax avoidance over the coming year. Big time, not just small time, big time, because I think that they really are going to start making proper moves internationally to start getting the revenues that these guys have been avoiding for so long. And there's going to be many, many more questions about who runs the algorithm. Because an algorithm, they say, oh, an algorithm's neutral. It's not. Whoever programs it decides what the algorithm looks for, what information they know about us personally, what political information can be instilled from those algorithms, and so on. So I see all that becoming, at last, it should have been done in 1998, this, but last is they're beginning to wake up to this. Also, I see stock values plunging, particularly with a lot of those big companies, particularly with Facebook, and I see Nick Clegg resigning. And also there's going to be, I said it before, and it's already started to come into effect. I said last year actually the same thing, that moves will be made to stop the sharing of personal data. That's one of the things I said. It's happening, and I feel it's going to happen more, and I feel ultimately we will have control over our own data, that these big companies won't be able to sort of know everything we do and whatever website we go to. We will hold it on our system, not on their system. And there's going to be new data laws passed internationally, country by country at first, but then international laws about being anonymous on the web and so forth. Immigration numbers, I feel, are going to be shooting up in America. There's going to be an absolute flood of immigration into America, and I think we're going to see a second surge here in Europe as well. So there's going to be, this is a problem that won't go away. Ultimately that wall, I think, has to be actually put up, like it or not, because I feel the things getting completely out of hand. I see there's going to be a big scandal too about people being given green cards they shouldn't be, and these were not announced. It's like, give them 1,000 green cards, don't tell anyone, sort of thing. Shut them up, give them green cards so they're not immigrants, they're actually legitimately here. There's going to be something like that that's going to be revealed, and a lot of fakery has been done with it too. Fake cards and fake profiles and things like that. There's going to be a big revelation about that in America, and I think we're also going to see major problems again with immigration in Europe, and I feel that France is going to have a lot of serious conflicts. Not just it's had conflicts with the UK, but I feel a lot of internal conflicts within France. And I feel political change happening in France, kind of forced political change happening in France. So I feel France has got a lot of serious problems ahead. And also financial problems in Europe as well, I want to say. I think there's going to be more interesting things to be seen about damage to the euro ultimately. Ultimately, I think the euro will go, not next year, not in 2022, but ultimately I feel it will go. We also got, coming up next year, we've got the new cross track will be opening. That's not a prediction, that should happen, that's meant to happen. This is the new infrastructure system running across London. And I see Boris Johnson taking great political prestige out of this. Meanwhile, at the same time, Joe Biden in the USA is going to be doing the same with the launch of the new Amtrak trains and so forth. They're going to be trying to take a lot of political kudos out of this. But I actually see here in the UK, Boris Johnson's going to announce a huge new infrastructure project. I said it would happen last year. I said it would happen. It didn't, but I feel it's still going to on the cards. I think it's going to happen this year. It will happen eventually. Like I say, I'm not sure I've got my timing always right, but I think it's going to be announced after the cross-track thing that we're going to build the tunnel to Ireland, an undersea tunnel to Ireland, or possibly, I think it would probably go undersea rather than, possibly part of it might be overland. I think it might be a part bridge and part undersea, but I see that happening. Don't know if it's possible to do that, but I feel something like that's going to happen too, and it's going to be announced. Big infrastructure project. And I think also, sticking with Northern Ireland, I think that there's going to be a deal struck with the EU now, and all the real problems with all these not allowed to buy sausages and things and the rest of it, that's all going to change. I think Europe's going to relent on that, and we're going to see better movement and better peace in Northern Ireland because of that, because it was just causing real serious problems socially as well as economically to Northern Ireland. So that's going to be a bit better, I feel. In the UK again, I think there's going to be developments in space technology. This is going to become quite important to the UK. It's going to develop over the years. We're going to see the UK developing an awful lot of electronic innovation for all types of different areas, and this is going to be a huge, great thing in the UK, but also worldwide. There's going to be a big space race on now, major space race. Reason? Because China has, not only has it got its new space stations type things up there, but they've realised that China is weaponizing space. This is all again part of the problem that revolves around the stuff I was talking about Taiwan before. And I think weaponization of space is on its way, and very, very dangerous. And I see defense systems being sent up, and I see a huge increase in space. So take your money out of Google, take your money out of Amazon, take your money out of Facebook, bung it into space technology. So I see all that happening. Same again in the UK, big spending on scientific research. I feel that the universities... Oh, someone's at the door. Oh, it must be Joe Biden. Yes, it is. Oh, yes, he's fallen asleep. Never mind. I see big investments in places like Cambridge, the universities, and new developments in things like cyber security and things like this. You know, that's all going to be part of the developments of the way technology is going to go, particularly in the UK. I also see a lot of media cover-ups being exposed in 2022. Big corruptions over tax havens. I've kind of mentioned that already, but a number of big-name celebrities, A-list celebrities, being brought to book over this. And I feel one at least, but maybe more, A-list celebrities are going to be jailed for tax fraud. And I see that happening in 2022. We'll do more about that in some of the shows that me and Jane do later on, because obviously I've gone on a long time already. How long can I go on for? I'll have to just give you some more of that later on, guys. Inflation's going to be a huge issue over 2022. It's going to be a worldwide problem, inflation, but particularly in America and the UK. I see, mortgages going up. And interest rates going up, and therefore demands for more money, demands for higher wages going up. So we're going to start seeing strikes and things like that. Going to come at a very bad time economically, but I do feel that 2022 itself will be a year of much higher inflation and problems with inflation. It's going to start to run out of control, so they're going to have to start doing corrective things for that. Cyber currency, I see a big crash in that. Not all of them. I see one of the big ones. I don't think it's Dogecoin. I think it's one of them. One of them somewhere is going to go tank. There's going to be a tank on one of those. One of them's going to tank. Not all of them, but one of them's going to tank. I mentioned it before, carbon tax will be given on China. So this is going to be part of a big trade war we're going to start to see with China. Eventually, India starts to surge ahead economically, I feel. It's going to do very well it's a slow development with India, but I really do feel India ultimately is going to overtake China. It's going to be a very, very powerful country, India, in due course. And I agree with what Vivekananda said, who was one of the great Indian seers. I believe he says that India will one day kind of be the beacon for the world for hope, for spiritual things. And it will help the world to see things in a proper perspective. And all these problems and worries we're talking about now, if we start to develop a greater spiritual understanding, it will be India that will guide the way from us. So there will be a slowing of the Chinese economy. And this will eventually also trigger an uprising in China. We'll see a rebirth of the movements that happened in Hong Kong, and all the horrible things that have been happening to the Uyghur people, and the terrible suppression of Tibet, and the abuse of the Chinese people themselves by the authorities there. We will see eventually a great change in China, and will model itself on Taiwan. So we need to protect Taiwan. So those are some thoughts on the world economy. I'm going to move on now just to a few last thoughts and some unexpected things that I feel might come up in 2022. I told you it'd be a long one today, didn't I? So this is some other thoughts now, just some other little things that I picked up about the future. Because like I say, sometimes all these things. I don't know if all what I've said is going to happen in 2022. Sometimes, like with the virus, I predicted it. My timing was slightly out, but the actual content was correct. And same with the Tokyo Olympics. I said that the Tokyo Olympics would be under serious problems, and I couldn't see the Tokyo Olympics going ahead properly. It did go ahead, and I saw an earthquake, but actually the virus mess things up for them. So you kind of see it partly, don't you? You can't see it all, you see some of it. And I wouldn't worry yourself when the things I say always, because we can make things better ourselves. I'll tell you a little bit more thoughts about that in a moment. And I also said that Facebook would be brought to account and things like that, and the tech brands and all the rest coming through. So you pick up a lot of things. Another thing I did see, however, I see that there's going to be, Africa gets missed out on my predictions quite a lot. Unfortunately, I see a really nasty civil war, a new one, happening in Africa, which is going to be really brutal, a really brutal civil war in Africa. I think it's coming up this year. But this civil war will see thousands die. It will be not just because we get a lot of conflicts in Africa. There's a lot of problems Africa gets with arming people who've got no food. You know, it's the worst possible thing we can do. But I see something coming up there that's going to be really dreadful. And maybe it might be into 2023, but I think we're probably still within the bounds of 2022. And there's also going to be something where there's going to be an implosion of some sort of cloud computing. Now, and I know these things are under hack quite a lot of the time, and there's a constant battle between keeping everything safe. But I feel one of the big cloud groups is going to get hit, and it's going to be taken right offline, and it's going to cause major, serious economic problems for some companies. So I do see that happening too. Keeping the Olympics, actually, the Beijing Winter Olympics. I think there might be a lot of protests going on at that time, possibly another uprising attempt in Hong Kong, which will be brutally pushed aside. But the whole idea of the abuse of human rights, I think, is going to come much more to the fore, and we're going to see the Beijing Olympics politicised in many respects, and a lot of talk on the news about where China is going. So that's my main predictions. But I'd just like to finally just say to you that, you know, all of this that we're going through, we kind of look at times we're in and we think they're dark times, you know, but there's always dark times, really, because we're coming through and out of what in India they call the era of Kali Yuga. Now, Kali Yuga lasts for tens of thousands of years, but it's a dark period. It's like the age of lead, as they would call it in the Greek teachings, the age of iron and the age of lead, and we move gradually towards this golden age. But I subscribe to the idea, and this is something I felt because I've been reading more about the Indian ideas on this, but there's a period of a golden age amongst the dark age that comes, and all the kind of oracles through the past, whether you look in South America, whether you look in Egypt, whether you look in India, whether you look in China, whether you look to the Aborigines, whether you look to the American Indians, or to people like me, they all kind of are pointing to a turning of the age of darkness. So what we're seeing with all these troubles that we're having in the world is the birth pangs as we enter a better age. Now, the golden age is not an age where suddenly everything's all right and we all can eat lots and drink lots and be comfortable. It's more of a thing of consciousness. It's more of a thing of us all waking up. This period is supposed to last up to 10,000 years. So if we are indeed entering a golden age of consciousness for 10,000 years, then this is a great time to be born. And particularly at the transition period between the Kali Yuga and the Satya Yuga, the golden age. Because if we do enter this period, we have both the benefits of both. Because in the dark age, we can progress very quickly spiritually as an individual in a dark age. Through simple things like mantras and yogic practice, we can progress faster than we would in other ages. And yet we're also at the dawn of this new age of enlightenment. So it is a good time to be born, even though we think the world is a dreadfully worrying place. Reality is within our heads, inside ourselves. We are that consciousness. We are already that golden age if we want it to be. We can enter spiritually into a golden age before the world does. Because what happens with the golden age is everybody wakes up, and everybody wakes up one at a time. And walking this earth at the moment are many great souls, and there will be many, many more great souls who will help move the golden age forward from all religions and all faiths and all countries. It will appear everywhere. Gradually, people will wake up and we will enter a better age. And even if we didn't, you can still find it within yourself, because you can be happy. Which brings me to my book, Be Happy. Don't forget, it's my new one. It's out on Amazon. And I talk in there also about all these ideas of the golden age and what it's like and what will it be like in the future, and how can we find personal happiness, I suppose. What is happiness? You know, is it something we search for in the world, or is it something we can find within ourselves? And can we find a permanent state of happiness? You know, not doolally happiness, but a happiness of a gentle background feeling that everything's okay in the world, that everything's right, that we can be happy right through our lives, right past and through our death and into the next life, that happiness can be our lodestar. And it can be, and it's easy. It's easy, easy, easy. But hopefully you'll enjoy reading it in my new book, Be Happy, and you'll learn all about what I have to say and what, you know, my encounters with Sharavan Abba, who is also a lovely, lovely man who has inspired me a great deal. And you'll read all about my family and all about the stories of my grandson's fight with diabetes and overcoming adversity, and how happiness can see us through. So hopefully there's something in there that you would enjoy, and perhaps even give it as a Christmas present to your friends. Okay, thanks for joining me. I'll see you soon. See you again, guys. Don't forget to follow the channel. Bye for now. Check out our website for more stuff. You can book psychic readings with us and find out about our public events, or watch our fantastic movie called Mystic Journey to India. It's a mind-boggling adventure that's now showing on Amazon Prime. And if you want to learn more, you can find out about my books and courses. Check out Messages from the Universe that reveals the ancient secrets of existence, or read my book called Psychic School to discover and enhance your own psychic skills. Or how about What to Do When You're Dead, my book about the afterlife and what it's like. All this plus lots more, lots of new articles and videos, all on my fascinating website.